everyone. We can do a little ban list discussion, talk about how it impacts the meta and how things are going to change going forward with it. Doesn't matter if you agree with it or not, whether you think more should have been done. This is the ban list, and what's important is that you adjust how you play for ban lists. That's how card games work, and unfortunately, that's what you gotta do if you want to keep playing is accept what was done. So we first have Objection and Universal Ramp card Snake 2. It's been used in Search Piccolo. Other than that, it hasn't really been used as much because a lot of the decks that can use Ramp are using 16. It's going to change how the deck works a little bit. So people were running the Objection not for the Gogeta 7, they were running it really for the Violent Predator 21 in the deck because it had two win cons, 21 and Gogeta 7. In all honesty, the Gogeta 7 was slightly clunky because of the Sparking 10 requirement, and the deck didn't have a lot of burst options if people even were running burst. So a lot of times they're winning with 21 more than their Gogeta 7. So with the removal of Objection, you can no longer ramp to your 21. You would either have to go, okay, I'm going to stay Gogeta 7, add some burst mechanics to my deck, and realistically, you can still turn 6 Violent Predator due to your leader ramping if you really, really wanted to. Which, the matchups where it matters, like Hotshot, you can get to turn 6 and 7. It's not a, oh my god, I need this turn 4 to win type thing. So it doesn't affect that matchup that much. And it lets you change the deck to allow for more Gogeta 7 plays. Because you weren't playing Gogeta 7 on 3 or 4 because you wouldn't have the Sparking. You're still playing it on 5, so the ramp didn't affect much for that line. That being said, if people do want to do more Violent Predators, they do have the option of going with the 16 ramp, but they couldn't run Gogeta anymore. And that is actually a relevant route you can go now because of another card on this list, Tau getting banned. Without a check for proper discard, which Gogeta 7 doesn't do proper discard, you can run a solid discard engine in your Piccolo deck now. You can run Revival, Piccolo Gohans, you can run Zama's engine stuff, you can run more Special Beam Cannons if you want, you could run more copies of Toa, the Overwhelm discard. So you can turn this deck into a more interactive, more early game oriented deck that has decent plays on turn 2, 3, 4, other than pass Vegeta the Cruel or Hidden Potential. You can actually start playing cards. And then you can still have Violent Predator at the top end, because now that Gogeta's out of the deck, none of the cards I listed are above 25k. So you can start putting 16s in the deck. You can actually have a more interesting match with your opponent than you used to with a less clunky deck, because really the objective of Gogeta 7 and Violent Predator didn't mesh well with each other. So it'll be interesting to see how people adjust for it, but my prediction would be that people adjust to the proper discard engine, not the pseudo discard of Gogeta 7, and you use the fact that Tau's banned to their advantage. In terms of other decks using it, it's not really being used much. It is possibly was going to be used in the U7 Burn deck to be able to get a turn 4, turn 5 win with U7 Burn. Now you'd have to get a turn 6 win with U7 Burn. So that's relevant, unless I don't really want to say it, but maybe in the remake of the Super Saiyan 3 Goku leader, it's still gonna let you do the ramp. I mean, you're gonna be able to do a turn 5 Universe 7 burn with that leader, so that'll be interesting to see how that works out. So let's move on to the next card. So we have the Unyielding Spirit Trunks. I know we're talking about how it impacts the meta, but just for a quick second, if you consider the fact that they ban Tien, they have to touch blue in some way. So to take that as you will. Maybe it should touch Sensu Bean instead. Who knows? Maybe Dimension Magic should have been eroded. They touched this, which is fair. I mean, it was a 1 of index. It can cause some bad play issues, and even if you look at a lot of the blue decks, it wasn't even running the 1 copy they're allowed to. There's so many strong cards now that there's just not room in a lot of decks. A lot of decks untap during their opponent's turn, or they like cards that let them do both untap during either turn. And Trunks unfortunately gives you the option during your turn from attacking. And a lot of control decks don't swing that much. So depending on this card becomes a problem. So it really doesn't affect a lot of the current decks. And you could argue it might affect Invoker deck once again. And that's about it. There's not really much else there we can discuss. Maybe if you were running the Dende Frieza swap deck, you would technically be a blue leader. So you could do swap stuff easier as a Dende Frieza swap. Not really much else there other than most likely it was just done because they're giving blue more support. So TN being banned is pretty relevant. Dimension Magic was already strong enough. Sensu Bean was already strong enough. And the main thing, other than just generic blue, Geneba has a lot more ability to stop their opponent now. And that's the biggest thing right there, is just TN and Geneba users. And of course it was going to screw up the Invoker decks. So of course you got to get rid of cards that are going to stop your new set. Every card game does that, let's be real. It's not just this game. Every card game does bans to promote their latest set. But the main thing with this is Geneba was at the regionals in Chicago, and it's going to have even less checks with this TN. At the end of this video we'll go over some side deck impacts that this has, because clearly this was like a 3 of inside decks, and now you got to run different cards in your side deck, so we'll go over that at the end. Tau, a lot of time was using its Topos. Well, Red just got expansion set counter counter, Yellow already had a counter counter. Every deck has a counter play for the Topo where they don't get the auto at least. So just run those cards. If you're running it just for the Topos, you have other cards you can run for the Topo. There's even a new, if you're U7 or blue, there's a new Frieza coming out in set 9 that can bounce it before it gets its auto, since it's a counterplay put back in play instead, and it advances your board. So it's fine there. In terms of people worried about discard, yes, this enables the Piccolo deck to go proper discard route. Android 13 is getting support in the next set, so Android 13 can do things. Cell can do things. People have been talking Lord Slug, and I think that's a little too premature for people to talk about that, because even if people weren't playing Taos and they ran into a Lord Slug player, I'll tell you right now, Slug is a little bit outdated. It did not get any support, and he draws less than his opponent does nowadays. People are drawing 2-3 cards a turn easy. Slug's drawing 1, 2, and if it gets a search, 3. Because 1 from life, 1 from draw, 1 from the search, or maybe if it's not taking the life, it's just getting 1 from swing. So it draws 3 while playing its searcher. Other decks take a life, swing, draw, search, draw, and then even more stuff in 1 turn. So at Slug's best, it can keep up with their draw, and on slow turns, it does not keep up with their draws. And Slug's way of discarding is he trades a 1-for-1. So if your opponent's drawing more cards than you, and you're doing a 1-for-1 discard trade with your opponent, you're going to run out of cards before they do. That simple. So Slug is not free with this card added in. It is, unless you're facing a player who's drawing less or equal cards to you. As a Slug player, you're killing yourself by playing Slug and discarding your opponent's cards. So really this helps. 13, Cell, and Surge Piccolo can turn into its true discard form instead of pseudo discard form. So that is relevant still, and hand destruction will be a thing. It's just not going to be exactly what people expected with Slug Resurgence. People are going to try it, I'll tell you that. It's going to get some places just because the more people try a deck, the more slots it gets in top cuts. That simple. So just by variance of card games, when people are going to play it, it's going to get a few positions. People are going to think it's relevant when it's just volume. So I'd say save yourself the trouble. Just skip to a better discard deck. If you do want to go the discard route, don't waste your time with Slug. And then next we have the Errata de Broly, which was changed again today. The reason why I waited is because I wanted to wait for them to announce. It doesn't touch energy. So, it's still a fantastic leader. If you look at the front, it's the same as the new Jiren. So clearly they wanted to make leaders more in line. Its backside, it's still one of the best yellow leaders, being able to swing twice. If you are running the green-yellow, it can do some successor stuff. With Talgon, this can be a discard deck too, keep that in mind. You can run a discard deck with this Broly now. Tapping stuff is still strong. So, there's no problem with this. At worst, its backside is a front side baby that also lets you draw for each time it swings, so it's better than baby front side. Its front side is comparable to Jiren and other things, and it also can tap down non-barrier blockers with its R-Stop A combo that's on the field. Someone did a counterplay, Videl or Roshi. Now they can use its combo power, not tap it for the turn. Now you can basically pretend they didn't do a counterplay one drop and they did a regular just counterplay. So that's useful there. It also lets you tap down some non-barrier chain link cards, where maybe someone played a vulnerable little guy and didn't swing with it because they need it for next turn. Well, Broly can tap it down and swing at it. So it's still a relevant leader. Just because you can't manipulate your energy doesn't mean that much for if you play it as a just aggro yellow leader, it's fine. If you do want it to go more control route like people were doing with it, blue-yellow is still a thing. You can still Sensu. You can look into playing the Zamasu counter play, or active battle I think it is. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's there's options if you want it to be blue-yellow control still, and this leader is still one of the best blue-yellow control leaders. So that's that. There's nothing wrong with it. You can still play it. Still does a lot. Still better than most leaders. So just you gotta change the deck you were making. If you were gonna splash an obscure color, you're not gonna be able to do that now. So that's it for the actual ban list part. Let's discuss side deck changes. Now that we know some of the changes that this. So we know Janeba's gonna come back with one of its checks being gone. So a lot of side decks are probably going to have 3 of Vegeta making an entrance. It allows you to shuffle 3 of your battle cards back to the bottom of your deck, and it advances your board for 1 energy, another 15, which wide boards and dual attackers are fairly good against Janemba because it makes them waste more resources per turn than they're used to wasting. So that's a good counter there. 3 in a side deck. It basically replaces the 3 TNs you were going to use. You could think about using the combo card that lets you do the same thing, because if Cooler Mill becomes relevant, the Vegeta is bad against the Cooler because you're just giving them more bodies to neg. So if you wanted to next level it, adding those combos that let you shuffle 3 back in, or 3 at the bottom I should say, is your next option. Keep in mind if you do that, it's not as good against Janemba, but it covers your Cooler matchup. So I'd say look at the meta, predict. If Cooler's relevant, you need to adjust it to have the other anti-mill card. If Cooler's not as relevant, Janeba's going to be relevant. So play even with Hotchak. So play the 3 of Uchi make an entrance. Next, we're going to see 3 to 4 Haru-Harus, because a lot of this meta looks like it's shaping to be Surge leaders. And there's still some relevant yellow leaders. There's still going to be some relevant green leaders, especially with the discard coming. So, being able to just Haru chain and swing with crits is a big deal against a lot of these decks because they're not ready for that board to come out. It's especially powerful with red because as your turn 4 play, you can use new promo 1-drop Broly, scout the counterplays, see if they might have the hidden potential if they're Search Piccolo, or their Denial of Hope, check for it in their hand. You can't get rid of it because it's not a battle card, but at least they're either going to have to tap in a way that's beneficial to you by you playing the Broly to respond to it, to stop it, or they're going to have to let you see their hand. And you can know right away by doing that, check, am I free to do my Haru chain and then go on my opponent and have all my energy still open. So I'd say 4 if you really want to maximize that chain in these matchups, and 3 if you need space for other cards. Next, you're probably going to have 2 Dark Banisher Foos. It's still good against Geneva. People are going to play even more Stally Blue Negate stuff now, so you still need a check there, and it's good against Hotchalk. So you've got to still have 2 Dark Banisher Foos in your side. 3's probably too many because you don't want to see it too early. So in general, 1 wins the game. So 2 Dark Banisher Foos. Then the next thing you're probably going to have is 2 to 3 Dark Power Black Mass Saiyans. It's good against Hotchalk players, good against Immigrant Swarm if that's so relevant, which that'll probably depend on how relevant Cooler is in the meta. You'll probably see that die a lot more if Cooler takes place. It's still good against other things like Pan plays and things too. And overall, just a solid card. 3 might be saying too much. Once again, that might be a 2. But if you have the room, 3 is fine. So that's going to be the main card. So realistically, you have maybe 11 of your 15 side deck decided, and then your last 4 to 5 will be deck dependent, basically. So there you go. Instead of throwing 3 Tians in your side, you're going to have 3 Vegeta making an entrance, which doesn't answer other blue decks, but at least it's going to stop some of this Geneba resurgence that we're going to see. And in terms of hand destruction, I would say play deck that draws as much as possible. You might not be able to play your same deck anymore. If your deck drew 1 card a turn, 2 cards at its best, that's not going to cut against discard. So you need to start looking into a different deck. And that's the unfortunate reality of card games, is deck strength changes based on card pool. And your favorite deck is not always going to be the strongest deck. If you still want to play it, that's fine. You have to accept the fact that your win ratio, or 1%, is less. And that's what you accept every single time you pick a different deck. So go into the match knowing your win percentage is less, and you accepted that risk when you picked a different deck. That's my advice to everyone. I hope everyone enjoys the video, and best of luck with your side deck adjustments, best of luck with your main deck adjustments. Welcome to the Geneva players, welcome to the 13 and Cell players, and gonna be fun to see the change to the Search Piccolo deck. I'll definitely like seeing how many people adjust to pure discard, how many people stay with Gogeta 7. And realistically, if you want to stay with Gogeta 7, just one last note to those Search Piccolo players: side deck the Violent Predators and 16s. There you go. Play the deck as a Gogeta 7 discard deck, and against matchups where you need it, side into Violent Predator. So you're going to get rid of your burst cards, you're going to get rid of your Gogeta 7s, and put in your ramp and your 21s for those matchups. Which there's, if you take out the objections, if you take out the 21s, and put in cards that do burst stuff, and put in, like, for example, the burst Goku or burst Piccolos and stuff to replace those, that's fine. You can play that main deck, and then when you're not playing the Gogeta, side all that stuff out, put in your ramp engine. And I think you'll find you can win just as much that way as you can not with the old deck. And if you really don't like the modal side, because some people love like modal side decks where they can change how their deck functions with their side deck. If you don't like that type of stuff, just change to the interactive early game discard plan with the Gohan Piccolos and the Zamasu chains and stuff like that. And I'm sure you'll feel you actually might have even more fun with that deck since you're actually playing more cards. Bye everyone. Have a great time and good luck with whatever you play.